Today, Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz spoke out against the U.S. strategy in the conflict in unusually strong terms. In fact, he said there is no strategy. Take a listen.
The Americans clearly have no strategy, and the problem with conflicts like this is always that you don't have just to go in, you also have to get out again. We saw that all too painfully in Afghanistan for 20 years. We saw it in Iraq. So this whole affair is, as I said, ill-considered, to say the least. At the moment, I cannot see what strategic exit the Americans are now opting for, especially as the Iranians are obviously negotiating very skillfully, or rather very skillfully not negotiating. And letting the Americans travel to Islamabad only to leave again without any results. An entire nation is being humiliated by the Iranian leadership, in particular by those so-called revolutionary guards.
Strong words there. I want to pull in our chief political editor, Michaela Küfner, now. Michaela, why do you think the Chancellor chose to be so blunt about the situation, and why did he do it now?
Well, clearly, Germany is also feeling the economic impact increasingly and losing faith. And in fact, Friedrich Merz was asked at the appointment he had after this, where I was present, about this comment again, whether he felt disillusioned. He said, yes, he feels disillusioned because he was told by Israel and the US that this would last a couple of days. And he doesn't see this nearing the end at all. He also reserved the right that the Europeans would have their own concept of how to come about a peaceful resolution of this conflict. Clearly, the Europeans involved in diplomacy in the background, but this is a German chancellor who really is feeling the pain even in his own coalition. And in the end, it's about political stability back home that makes a leader. His own Social Democrats already started openly discussing, once again, lifting the debt ceiling here in Germany as a last resort if this crisis continues. So this is going past the pain threshold where Friedrich Merz feels he can still stick by Trump's side and really have faith in when he doesn't see any kind of strategy.
And yet he must know that phrases such as Iran is humiliating America and that the Iranians are very skillful negotiators. He has to know that those comments are not going to go down well at all with Donald Trump. Is he not worried about that?
Well, this is what we were trying to get out of him, and he wouldn't really comment on that. But he should be worried about this. But the experience he's had time and time again with Ukraine, but also now with Iran, is that Donald Trump really doesn't seem to care that terribly much about how his European allies feel about either of those conflicts at the end of the day. And he feels clearly that the moment has come to put some distance between the US, which Germany so heavily depends on, the whole of Europe so heavily depends on in strategic terms, in defense terms, because this could have a price back home when this crisis really begins to bite and when consumers here in Germany feel the brunt of this. It's not just at the petrol at the gas station. We expect that products will increase in price because of the price hikes in energy, and we're heading towards the summer. There might be jet fuel shortages, so that people really find a profound impact on their lives. Of course, one has to mention that the biggest impact will be felt in poorer countries where there are already fears over food shortages and food security, because it's not just the oil and gas, it's also the much needed fertilizer that is stuck at this moment in time.
And we know, Michaela, that the Chancellor, I mean, this is not his first time at the rodeo when it comes to, speaking his mind about U.S. policy. I mean, he's repeatedly said that he sees no clear U.S. strategy in this war. And he said it again today. Are there really no conversations between Berlin and Washington where these questions are being addressed?
Well, whenever we ask about this, we're always told that every couple of weeks, Friedrich Merz speaks to Donald Trump. I'm very interested to see whether there will be a phone call anytime soon. Clearly, there is coordination taking place, but he did also put on the record when a couple of weeks ago he went to Washington to meet the US president that the Europeans weren't consulted, that he wasn't consulted, and he would have advised against this. And there's a stark contrast to how he reacted last June in what is now known as the 12-day war, which saw for the first time the Trump administration bombing Iran, those nuclear sites. There, the German side, and that's when Friedrich Merz sent his foreign minister, tried to stop this from happening, called for de-escalation until the last moment. Then the strikes happened, and Friedrich Merz just moved on. He just said he hopes that something constructive will come out of this in the region. He just completely dropped the issue, didn't pass any kind of judgment on it. Well, we're clearly in a different reality now, where the reality is created and the impact this is having on consumers, on electorates, is getting so profound, where the benchmark policy Friedrich Merz promised when he became elected, which was economic growth, is being decimated week by week. The forecasts are going down over this Iran war and the stability of his own coalition, which is currently planning deep cuts into the German social system in a push for profound reform here as well, also of the pension system, is feeling the bite. And that's where he clearly felt he needs to put this on the record. But there clearly will be a political price by the Trump administration, I'm pretty sure.
Well, he clearly wants something to be done yesterday rather than today. How does the Chancellor, how does he see Germany's role in resolving this conflict?
Well, he once again reiterated that the Europeans and the Germans are working in the background, facilitating diplomatic talks. If we're lucky, we will find out afterwards what that exactly entailed. But clearly, those communication avenues are now open. He stressed that there was close coordination with the US, but coordination doesn't mean they all speak with one voice. And then there is the pledge that he did once again repeat that Germany would be willing to help secure the Strait of Hormuz once this war is over, leaving open, I've asked this several times, what the exact definition of this war being over actually means. He clearly means when the hot fighting is over, he would need that. He would need a parliamentary majority to send German minesweepers, any kind of military personnel abroad. That's pretty unique to Germany. Here, the Chancellor can't, like the US president, just decide to go to war or deploy troops. Simply not possible. So he would need a majority in his own coalition. And that would require a coalition with several other countries, European partners. It looks like France, Britain, potentially Italy would be part of that. But at the same time, when is this war over? And that is where he clearly lost patience, because he doesn't see that anywhere near happening.
And what about, Michaela, before we run out of time, the chances of getting that parliamentary approval to send in minesweepers to help clear the Strait of Hormuz? I mean, what are the chances that Parliament would say, yes, let's do it?
I think it would be hard to find someone who would enthusiastically say yes, but if there is an end to the hot conflict, he can feel pretty confident. Also, because there is this huge dependency, there's pretty much nowhere else to go. And while we have seen a lot of public debate and criticism for a former president who suggested that the German military could be deployed to protect German economic interests, which includes shipping routes. In the past, we are in a new reality, and ordinary Germans are having very different discussions from what they had just a couple of years ago. This started with the Ukraine war. There's a growing awareness that these strategic interests need to be protected. There would be a lively debate, but given that the hot conflict is over, and this is the problem, I think he would find a majority. If that doesn't happen, and there's no sign, there doesn't seem to be any kind of diplomatic avenue for this at this moment in time. Instead of that, there continues to be insecurity, and that is poison for the German economy, which he is really pushing hard to get to recover.
Yeah, I mean, the level of uncertainty is stubbornly high, that is for sure. Our chief international editor, Michaela Küfner, tonight here in Berlin. Michaela, as always, thank you.
A bold critique from the German Chancellor. Is he right? I put that to Omid Nouripour, Vice President of the German Bundestag for the Greens. He's currently on a trip to the Middle East and joined me from Abu Dhabi.
I think there's nothing more I could agree with. He's completely right. The Americans are wasting a historic chance for a stable and durable peace in the Middle East. This regime has been stabilized in the last weeks when President Trump announced that help is coming to the Iranian people. When 3.5 million people in Iran were at the streets and were shut down by the regime, nothing happened. Now we have some kind of a small regime change, the military dictatorship, and a war order in Iran. And for now, they are stable.
But I mean, these are really some pretty bold words from the German Chancellor. And I'd just like to quickly follow up with you on that, because I mean, you know, there has been a certain level of diplomacy when it comes to opposition to, the U.S. and Israeli war on Iran. Do you think that this is now the correct strategy going forward to use such harsh words as were used in this statement?
It's not technically diplomatic. But to be honest, we are suffering massively from the way the Americans have fought this war. The shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz is affecting massively our economy. Look at my background. I'm here in Abu Dhabi and in the United Arab Emirates. They're suffering massively. All of the Gulf countries are doing it. And when the entire world economy is getting such a harm by unintended consequences of unreflected action, it's okay to talk about it. And I'm grateful that what Chancellor did.
So let's talk about the end game now, then, in the war. And I'd like to bring in the diplomatic angle. U.S. media are reporting that Iran has offered a new proposal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Let's have a look, because both AP and Axios, they're citing sources saying that Iran would end its blockade of the crucial shipping passage if the U.S. stops its blockade of Iran's ports. But talks on Tehran's nuclear program would be excluded for the time being. And this proposal, Omid, it doesn't cover Iran's missile capabilities or its support for armed groups in the Middle East. It's also not clear if the U.S. is considering the proposal. Officials are saying that President Trump is due to meet his foreign policy team later today. I'm wondering what you make of that offer by the Iranians. What were your first thoughts when you heard it?
Listen, the Iranian regime is everyone can trust. So any deal with them is way away from perfect. And yes, the missile program, the nuclear program, and the support of the regime for proxies and terrorist groups in the entire region is damaging not only the Middle East, but also our security and our economy. But in this moment, we are seeing a regime which is feeling like the survivor and a winner of the war against the United States, and they think they can dictate the prices. And the highest priority of all of us is the freedom of navigation to be brought back immediately. And this is why, if this is a way for a ceasefire, it's okay. But the bad thing would be to forget everything what happened, and the day after leaving the Iranian people and the people in the entire region alone with this brutal regime. So the day after, we have to talk about how to maintain stability with other people in the region, and not with this regime we mainly have to fight and contain.
Does that mean, in your view, and I'm trying to read between the lines of what you've just said there, does that mean that any solution must include provisions regarding Iran's nuclear program? And perhaps you can also tell us, the timing now of the Iranian proposal. They want the United States to end its blockade of the country as part of the proposal. Does that say something to you about the level of pain and pressure that the Iranian regime is experiencing at the moment?
Sure, they do, but the other way, we always are suffering from the blockades we have, and having a Strait of Hormuz, which is a few kilometers away from here, just being shut down could be a blueprint for others and could have a domino effect for all of for the entire worldwide navigation, freedom of navigation. This would be the end of world economy. So I think it's about step by step. The Iranian regime totally is a threat to our security, our interests, and our economy. But for now, it's about having gas prices which are affordable for our people. For now, it's about having some kind of a ceasefire which is stable, so we can go on with next steps and with more pressure on the regime in Iran.
You talked a lot about the pain that's being experienced, in the Middle East, where you are, in Germany, which is your home. But let's talk about the role of the EU now, and more specifically, Germany's role in this conflict and potentially bring it to an end. Merz says that he is now offering to send German minesweepers to clear the Strait of Hormuz. Is that enough?
I think it's about understanding that our interests are harmed, and it's about freedom of navigation, which is one of the highest priorities for my country. It is not about claiming that this is our war. This is not about being connected with a strategyless way of the Americans are dealing with the situation. But at the end of the day, yes, it's about investments to get back to the table as EU, as Germany. It's about friendship with other countries who are now under massive pressure in these days. So if we can help, we should. The details of the support should be negotiated not only with the Americans, but with the countries in the region, which can tell us which is needed, and of course with our partners in the EU.
It's been said in the past that Iran really has the advantage and the ability to play the long game in this war. Do you agree with that? Who has the upper hand, do you think, right now? Iran, the United States, both, neither of them?
The Iranian regime is massively weakened by this war, but not for now. They feel like the winners. So for a short term, they have the upper hand. But on the long term, this is a new regime which is it's matching to a war order. I highly doubt that they match also to a peace order. So the day after the war, we all gonna see that this regime is unstable and they could crumble.
I'd like to ask you, perhaps you can give us a little bit of insight on a personal note, because we know that you were born in Tehran, that you left the country with your parents when you were just 13 years old. Are you still in contact with Iranians back there, and what are you hearing?
Sure, the first days of the war, they were just enthusiastic just to get rid of the regime, and we're just happy that something new can happen and can achieve freedom and can rebreathe. But then the war was getting more and more senseless in the way that we fought, and they lost trust after Trump promised help would be at its way when people went to the streets and nothing happened there. So there is no trust that the Americans are going to come over and deliver it then. And now it's about daily life being managed, and so this is why they wanted the war just being stopped. And I hope that the day after there's going to be a new opportunity to get to liberty and into a normal life they couldn't have for the last 47 years.
There are still many moving parts to this conflict, but if you look at the current conditions and the situation, do you think that this conflict will leave the regime in a weaker position, in a stronger position? And where do you think it leaves, the region and also the state of diplomacy with Germany's partner and ally, the United States?
This regime is definitely weaker than before the war, but they are seeing that others are even suffering more. So this is why they feel strong. And when you look at the personnel, they lost a lot of their elite personnel. And the next people who stepped up now are not that good. The quantity and quality of personnel, of material, of funding, this has gone massively. So this regime is weakened, definitely. And this is why I hope that after this window of opportunity has been missed by the Americans, had been wasted by the Americans, we could have a next one very soon. But therefore, we need first some kind of a peace order and a normal life for the people in the entire region.
Omid, Nouripour, we want to thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.